What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is the K24 Turbo Civic project, and today I have to drill for boost reference off the turbo because that is not a reference point. That's for speed, which is annoying. But I just center punched that. I'm gonna drill it and tap it with my 1/8 NPT drill bit kit, and then I'm gonna be installing this push lock vacuum setup so I can run that to my boost controller. So I'm gonna get into that now. I should probably mention that I jammed that full of rags, that way when I drill this, no chips or anything get in there, and then this is all blocked, of course. But I probably should have done this prior to it being in, but I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted the fitting and everything, so here's what it is. Well, I ended up getting the fitting installed and everything. It looks good, in a good convenient spot, and I also got the downpipe fitted. Yeah, whatever, kind of hard to see, but I'm pretty much just trying to figure out what I'm going to do for my wastegate dump here, and I think I have an idea what's going on or what I'm going to do, but we're going to see what kind of metal I can get at the parts store to be able to do it, because she is tight back there. After the last video, if you watched it, I noticed after like 2 minutes of runtime, which is pretty much right when the video cut, that it started like excessively smoking out of the exhaust, which I didn't really think anything of because, you know, it's a brand new turbo, so there's oil on the outside of the housing, brand new downpipe, so obviously that's coated with some stuff, so I didn't think anything of it. And then the next day, I ended up going to take off the downpipe so I could heat wrap that too, because I heat wrapped everything else, and I noticed that when I took the V-band clamp off, my hand was like wet, and I was like, you know, it's probably just exhaust moisture or whatever, but come to find out it was oil. So I stuck my head in there, and I have a video and a picture I'll put up like here in a second too. But I looked at it, and sure enough, the brand new turbo from VS Racing is puking oil out of the exhaust housing. So I had to send that out, whatever. I'm just hoping that they'll do some sort of a warranty. Yeah, so it sucks, but you know, it is what it is. You can't really dwell on things like that, otherwise you're just never going to get anything done. So today, all right, so this is the boost controller I'm going to be using, and these are all the fancy push together, whatever, snap lock vacuum fittings, which just makes it super easy. So I'm gonna probably get into the car and start doing the wiring aspect of this, because I have to, I don't know if it'll focus, but I have to run a wire through the loom or whatever that goes into the car. That's the cleanest way, is just run it through the factory spot, through the firewall. So alright, so we're here in the garage, and this is one of the factory brackets that held the fuel lines or whatnot. So I'm thinking I'm gonna recycle this and use this as my mounting bracket for the boost controller. So I'm gonna get into trying to fab this up now. Well, this is kind of what I'm thinking for the bracket. It's bolted down. I don't have it tied. I'm probably gonna just use like 3M tape, because I've seen people do that in their engine bays with these, like right to their strut towers, so it should be plenty good enough. So I'll probably 3M it to that bracket right there, and then just run the lines over to the wastegate. Okay, well, here's how the bracket came out. Painted it black, just letting it dry, but now we're gonna start plumbing these lines to go from here to here. And these fittings are really cool, and this kit was only like 20 bucks on eBay, so we'll see how it holds up. I don't see why it wouldn't, but they're really nice, because you kind of just push the line into the fitting, and that's it. Like it snaps in, whatever. And if you want to undo it, you just push in on that black or on the blue thing and pull the line out. And it's just that easy to change a line. It's really convenient. So I'm gonna run these like I said, and we'll see what the outcome looks like. And this is what we're left with. So port 2 goes to the top of the wastegate, and then port 1 goes to the bottom of the wastegate, and you need a T, and you use that T and run that up to your cold side of your turbo. I'll put in a diagram of it right here just so you see. But I think now we're going to get into running these wires. All right, for the routing part of this nonsense, one of these wires has to go to the ECU, and one of them has to go to a switched, it doesn't have to be switched, but I'd prefer a switched power. And Honda recommends you putting it to a 15 amp fuse. So I'm going to use this add a fuse tap thing and plug this into one of the 15 amp fuses in here. And that's how I'm going to get my 15 amp fused power wire to the relay. And then the ground is going to go into the B21 port on the connector in the car, which I'll show that after. Okay, so I got the little connection soldered, heat shrinked, and I'm gonna run this out the same way I ran the ECU power, but I'll show you how it fits. But it fits nice. It's not, I notched the cover a little bit. Okay, you can see it. Notched the cover a little bit just so it's not touching anything, so that's good. Even put some electrical tape on there, and now I'm going to run it along the back of the firewall to the solenoid. Well, as of right now, I have the wire ran. And it's kind of hard to see, but whatever. That's a piece of wire I got to put in by the ECU, but I have it ran back there. Ran a new piece of loom, split the piece of loom off, routed it, got one of them little connector things that holds it. I think that's a pretty clean setup considering. So now I have to move on to going inside and plugging that wire into the B21 port. All right, so I'm getting ready to pull this wire through the dash that I have to put into the B21 port. And the way I like to do this is, that's a metal coat hanger that I straightened out, and I put it through the dash, get it roughly where I want it in there and where I can grab it. I'll run it up here, and this wire is wrapped around the end of the coat hanger a bunch of times, and then I electrical tape it. That way I can pull this through and it routes this wire for me. And just like that, the wire that I put through the firewall is cut, soldered, heat shrinked, and now I'm gonna plug that back in. I should also mention that the wire that you have to cut is, if you're looking at the bottom of the plug from the back side, like where the wires come in, the clip is on the top right now. There's 1, 2, 3 wires on the bottom, a blank spot. It's like whatever, it's just no place a pin can go. And then it's 2 over from that. It's a yellow blue wire. It was for some purge valve or something, but that's the wire you have to tap into. It's B21. You can find pictures all over Google about it, but yep, that's the one you need. Alrighty, so today's a new day, and today I'm running the oil pressure sensor gauge from AEM. And I had to run it through the firewall, of course, and there was no way of me reasonably getting that plug through it, so I unfortunately had to cut it. I'll solder it, heat shrink it, whatever. I'm getting pretty good at it at this point. But I used the same method to run it through the dash, just with the long coat hanger thing, and now I'm going to be mounting the gauge right about here. I think that's a nice clean spot. And, you know, you can kind of hide it and stuff too if you wanted to, which I like. I don't really want everybody to see the gauges everywhere, because then you kind of know something's up. So I want it to be a sleeper, but I'm going to hole saw this now. And just like that, she's done. And I think that came out really good. I'm really happy with that. And it fits really good in that spot. But if you have an em2 and you're going to do this, I would glue that locking tab up to there, because this tries to move the whole time. So if you glue that to there and do the same thing on the bottom, it'll come out really good. And I started my center hole slightly below center on this. and then this 52 millimeter gauge just fits because there's a curve there and then obviously the top, so you couldn't get any closer. All right, so I have another add a fuse thing, and I tapped into, it's kind of hard to see, tapped into one of the ignition on sources, and then I put the ground for this, hold on, in one of the factory spots that already had a ground. So that's good to go. Now I'm gonna plug the gauge in and make sure it works. So I got it in, it's all wired correctly. Doesn't light up. If I hit the button, just says 8.0. And I look to see like a troubleshoot thing. You can't find any information. So now I have to try to figure out why this doesn't work. Just my luck. Well, boys, today is an exciting day. They indeed fixed it. They said that they found some sort of manufacturing defect in there. It is what it is. I'm just very happy that they fixed it. And honestly, they did it super fast. They got it on a Monday, and I had it back on a Friday. So you can't really complain with that. But as of right now, I'm going to make this last boost line, and then I have to hook up the oil feed, rehook up the oil drain and all that. So we're going to get into that now. And just like that, it's back together. I didn't record it because I figured you've already seen me do it. But now today, which is one of the last things I have to do, I'm trying to make a wastegate dump because there's obviously little to no room back there. So just trying to make that. So I'm going to go cut this up and fab this up now. All right, so I just got done with the downpipe, and then I also did this. Just trim the cover to fit the fuel pressure regulator. I think that's sick. And now I have to trim. I had to take off the fog lights, and I'm going to re-glue in the factory plates because I kept those, but I have to trim this lip around because it obviously runs into all the intercooler piping stuff. So, well, I trimmed a whole bunch of this stuff off. I left a little bit of a lip just so I could put some like sealant on there because the cover didn't fit perfectly back on, which I knew it wasn't because you have to cut it out. So I got it back in there glued, and I put some of the, like I said, some silicone, and I'm gonna see how that fits and whether or not I need to cut off that big lip. And I also noticed, I believe I'm gonna have to cut all of that out too, which kind of sucks, but I'm gonna test fit it and everything once this dries, and then I'll see what I have to do to cut this out. Well, I test fit the bumper, and I don't have to cut the center grill part, which is sick. But the next thing I have to do is I have to remake this power steering line, the pressure side of it, because the second I moved it from the spot it was in over here to here, it blew this line. I'll show you. I'll go over to the car or my truck where I have it. But yeah, so I have to remake this with a PTFE AN hose, because I guess normal AN hose is only good for like 1,000 PSI, which I didn't know. I didn't really look into it either. I just assumed kind of thing. But yeah, so the PTFE stuff is good for like 3,000 PSI. So it should be enough to do this. But I'll go show you the other hose where it blew. All right, so this is what it did. It literally just blew this out of the fitting, and it started to do it here too. So I guess normal AN line is not good for power steering pressure side. You have to go with PTFE. So I'm gonna make that now. All right, so I got these fittings, both ends on, and this is one of the easier ways I found to do it so I don't mess up the fitting and the finish. So I'm just clamping like a normal line wrench in the vise, and then I just slide this in to that to hold it, and then I'm able to crank on this. And supposedly from what I read, you don't want to close that all the way like a normal AN apparently. I guess you want to leave like a 1 millimeter gap or something, which is about what that is. So I did that on both ends, but now I'm gonna throw it in the car. All right, so I started it, bled the power steering system best I can. Seems like this line is gonna hold. So we're gonna go drive this thing. It's already up to running temp. Not like it really matters because I can't beat on it, it's not tuned, so I can only just barely get into it probably.
it's driving pretty good, to be honest. I mean, I added a whole bunch of fuel to the tune, but just to keep it like super rich, but I didn't touch timing or anything, which is why I can't really get into it, because if it fuel knocks, you can blow it up. There. Now we'll be able to see good. Well, I'm gonna cruise a little bit. Dude, the blow-off valve sounds so good. Of just getting irritated, and it's all just coming together. I'll bring it back up the street and then make sure there's no leaks or anything. Oh my God, it sounds so good. Just sick because, I mean, obviously you guys are probably into cars, right? So you get it, but just building your own thing, and there's just nothing cooler than that. Well, that's gonna do it for today's video, guys. The next video will hopefully be of this thing getting tuned. I got in touch with Jamie Marsh, which is the GOAT when it comes to any of this stuff, so we're gonna set up a time here. I'm gonna drive this a few days just to prove that everything's okay, you know, no leaks, blah, blah, blah. I wanna prove it to myself that, like, it's okay before I go and spend all this money to get it tuned. So after I do all that and make sure there's no leaks or anything crazy, you know, we're gonna meet up with Jamie Marsh. But yeah, look forward to that video. It should be probably in a couple weeks if I had to guess. But as always, thanks for watching.